Welcome to homestead gardening in the Texas Gulf Coast. I have several types of gourds growing in the garden. Unfortunately, it's a little hard to tell where one vine starts and one vine ends and who's who. So let me show you how to tell the difference between the different gourds in my garden. Now, once all of these gourds fruit or even start to flower, it's much easier to tell them apart, obviously, but sometimes in the beginning, it's really helpful to know who is growing so you can dedicate the right amount of space to each one. Let's start with Luffa gourd. Luffa gourd has a really distinct palmate leaf. It's also very, very rough. You may not always see this companion on the plant, but if you can tell, there's a little ant crawling on this leaf. Usually with Luffa gourd, because it has a certain little sap on it, it attracts ants, and so you're going to find ants that will definitely bite you on Luffa gourd. Because it has this distinct sap, it also has a distinct smell. So when I crush the stem of this leaf, you're going to smell something that's peppery, and I can't describe it. Luffa has such a distinct smell that you really can't mistake it from other gourds. Another obvious difference between Wax Gourd and Luffa gourd, which both have yellow flowers and both flower during the day, is that the Luffa gourd's male flowers come in a cluster like this, and they're going to be covered in ants. You can see this Luffa growing behind me. This is a female flower that's going to be pollinated at this moment. This flower would have been open today, and what we're actually seeing on this flower is probably 50 ants. It's covered in ants, and those are probably the real pollinators of this Luffa today. This is Bottle Gourd. This Bottle Gourd leaf is not going to have lobes like the Luffa gourd. It's going to be a little bit more round. So you do see some ruffling, but it's more of a round leaf. It still has some of the palmate veining though. This is always going to be a really soft leaf. It's actually a really beautiful texture. Now, this has its own smell too, and it's not pleasant. When you first crush this leaf, it's going to smell almost like a motor oil. It's really disgusting. And then the smell gets a little bit better. But again, this is a distinct leaf type and a distinct smell on this gourd. This little bottle gourd is the female flower, and you can see it's recently been pollinated. So this fruit structure has been on here for a little while. The interesting thing about the bottle gourd that some of the other gourds aren't going to do is it's going to flower at night. So it's relying on night pollinators. It has white flowers too, which is really interesting, whereas the daytime Luffas, the daytime flowering Luffas, have yellow flowers. Because bottle gourds open at night, these are actually fresh white flowers that haven't opened yet. And this is a classic bottle gourd flower. This is actually a male flower, and you can see that the stem is going to be completely smooth, whereas this is a female flower, and you can see the tiny little fruit, the little bulbous parts of the fruit that are forming already. This giant leaf belongs to the wax melon, or you may have heard this called an ash gourd. This is specifically a bullet head wax melon or ash gourd. This is a very smooth leaf. It's not quite as rough as the Luffa, but it is a little bit rough. It also has a little bit of spiny fuzziness, not exactly a real fuzziness. However, you are going to see some really, really spiny stems, and that's sort of a dead giveaway in addition to its dark color and larger leaves. The smell on this gourd is going to be grassy and more watery. The wax or ash gourd that I showed you earlier is actually going to be a lot slower growing, and it will not start to pick up speed until it's really, really hot and dry out. So we're looking more at a July-August growth. It's also going to have what I would call happier flowers. They're really nice and open in the middle of the day, and they close a little bit in the evening, but they have light centers. They're lightweight looking flowers. It's hard to describe. They're also going to have that same fuzzy stem as the leaves and stem of the entire plant. They don't attract ants like Luffa gourd, so it's much easier to tell this plant apart. It's a little bit difficult to see since this fruit is so small, but this is the beginnings of a female flower on this plant. And you can tell that this is a wax gourd instead of a Luffa because the structure of the plant is much shorter than the Luffas would be for the female flower, and it's completely fuzzy. The gourd behind me is called bitter gourd or bitter melon. This is going to have an unmistakable small leaf. It almost looks like a little shamrock clover with multiple lobes. It also has a very distinct flavor. It's small, bright green, really, really cute. And the smell on this is going to be a lot like Luffa gourd and grass mixed together. It's really hard to mistake this particular gourd because it is so small though. And here's the bitter gourd. You can see the female flower fruit structure is already formed. This will probably flower in a few days. And this is a male flower. The slender stem is the dead giveaway, and these should flower at roughly the same time frame.